We're here for another episode of Around the Block. Today we are in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. I'm here with my friend, Pastor Jonathan Brooks, Pastor Jay of Canaan Community Church. He has an incredible story, a great story. They're doing some great stuff here in this part of the city of Chicago, joining with other churches, other believers, doing some stuff. So we're going to take a walk around the block. Pastor Jay, introduce yourself a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right, thanks so much. So, like you said, Jonathan Brooks, Pastor Jay. I am a lifelong resident of this neighborhood here in Englewood on the south side of Chicago. I am the pastor of Canaan Community Church and also a bit of a community activist and into doing stuff like Christian community development, where we like to see not only the gospel impact people's souls and their final resting place in heaven, but we believe that the gospel has a clear impact on the way we live every day, meaning that our emotional, physical, spiritual wellness is just as important as our spiritual. And so we just work with our residents and neighbors to try to make our community the place that God intends it to be. Because a neighborhood like Englewood and others, they'll be saturated with local churches, but we'll see very little impact that the gospel's supposed to make when we hit the ground. And so we're trying to be a church that changes that. It just says when the people of God are in place, there should be some transformation because God is in the place. Yeah.
So we're here in Englewood. A lot of people, this is kind of one of the more well-known neighborhoods in Chicago. Even if you're from outside of Chicago, you hear a lot of things. But we're here and you live here. So tell me a little bit about this neighborhood.
Yes.
And kind of what's going on around here. Tell me even a little bit about what you love about this.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I'm gonna start anyway.
All right.
Englewood is one of the most resilient and beautiful neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. What happens is a beautiful neighborhood like this, which is mostly like a middle income, African-American neighborhood, about 96% African-American with a growing Latinx population. What you'll see here are people who have owned homes for decades. And unfortunately, the issue is not necessarily whether people like living here. It's whether or not the investments that need to keep a neighborhood's infrastructure together have been made. So Englewood is one of those neighborhoods where infrastructure choices are different than in other communities because of the kind of people that live here. Because Englewood is a kind of landlocked neighborhood. It's not near the lake. It's not really near downtown. I call it the gateway to Midway Airport. We find a lot of the investment that's made in other neighborhoods doesn't get to us. And if it does, it gets to us much later as the city is concerned. But that means that the people that are here have more accountability for what happens in the community than anywhere else. And that's what I love about my neighborhood. I love the fact that if we want to see something done, then we as a community get together and get it done ourselves, not relying on anyone else to get it done for us. There's been a singular narrative that's kind of been portrayed and overlaid in our neighborhood of violence and poverty. And while those are characteristics of our community, notice I use the word singular. We believe that's a part of our story, but it's not the complete narrative. And so I spend much of my time along with other community residents highlighting the other aspects of our neighborhood, highlighting the beautiful people here, all of the amazing, beautiful parks and all the amazing, beautiful initiatives that are happening and the number of local entrepreneurs that have been created over time and the number of amazing churches and the people of God who are in this community working to see it become the place that God always imagined it to be. And I laugh because people think of it as a singular narrative. And I ask, that's interesting. I wonder if God looks down from heaven and sees our neighborhood and goes, oh my God, that's not what I meant for the world. Or he looks out at, Oak Brook and says, now they got it together. That's exactly what I wanted when I was creating the world. We know that's not true. We know that God sees the beauty and the brokenness in every place and in every person. And therefore, what we want to do is highlight the beauty that's often neglected in our neighborhood. Just like we feel like in the neighborhoods where they're often narrated only about beauty, some of the brokenness needs to be highlighted. Amen. So that's what I do. That's my heart. I love this neighborhood. Englewood actually translated into City of Angels. And if you ask me, that's exactly who's here.
So you've got a little, your personal story is really interesting and compelling, just about your relationship with this neighborhood.
Mhm.
Can you just, in 1 or 2 minutes, I know it's a long story, but just
No
in a couple
worries.
minutes, just give some highlights of what that is.
I sure can. I can give it to you real quick.
Awesome.
I was just like every other kid in the neighborhood who was told that its success meant to get out, escape from this neighborhood. And so I did everything possible, whether that was try to play basketball, football, be a famous rapper, whatever. And then finally falling on, let me go to school and get a college degree so I never have to come back here. Only to have God flip the whole script on me, bring me right back here to where I was supposed to be all along. And now I'm not only a pastor here, but a community leader, leading a church full of people who helped change my diapers and actually helped me to be who I am today. So I'm thankful for the journey I'm on. But just like every other kid in the neighborhood, I was trying to escape. And what God showed me was Englewood is not a place to escape, it's a place to invest.
There was a moment, wasn't there, in that journey that you realized that God had wanted you to be back here?
Yeah.
Not that
Yeah.
you were trapped here.
And the funny thing about it is that was an actual event that happened in the neighborhood that actually kind of like springboarded me back here for good. And I tell people, like, when you don't listen to God, but you think you know what's best for yourself, God sometimes has to go to drastic measures to get you to pay attention. And that's what it was for me. It was just a moment of full clarity where we had an event happen at the church long before I was a pastor of it at Canaan, and watched the community come in and not really have an appreciation for the church the way we do. They actually just saw it as a bunch of people who were completely disconnected from the community. And in that moment, it was like God spoke to me clearly and said, you know, my word says to love your neighbor as yourself. And if I called you to love your neighbor, maybe you should love your neighborhood as well. And in that moment, I knew right then and there that I was not only supposed to be back here, but God had greater things for me. And here we are.
Well, let's talk about one of the ways that you are loving your neighbor in your neighborhood, and you and several others are doing that. And you guys have been gathering together. There's been several of you gathering together for prayer, united prayer, not just from your church.
Oh no.
Tell me a little bit about what's going on.
Yes. So about 4 years ago, it started with an event that was actually held at Bread of Life Baptist Church right on 63rd, where a group of us got together and started gathering for prayer. So we started gathering for prayer once a week, and then it turned into a prayer revival, which we had a week-long prayer revival. We shut down all of 63rd Street. And then from there, it's just continued on, where we've decided as the church in Englewood to not focus on our own churches and our own like individual kingdoms as churches can often do, but to be the church in Englewood, the way Paul writes about the church in Corinth, or the church in Ephesus, or the church in Galatia. Paul didn't say, if you don't like what's happening in Galatia, you should just get up and move and go commute to Corinth for church. No, you have to understand your context and be the church there. So we pray together every week as one Englewood, one church. And the goal is to pray for the flourishing community of Englewood, to pray that God's glory would fall and be revealed in this place. We love Chicago. We love the whole South Side. God has placed us in this neighborhood. And from this neighborhood, the cries of God's people here are heard every week. Thursday by pastors, and on Friday by the entire community coming together for the Englewood House of Prayer. What we want to do is cover this community in prayer with different churches all over the neighborhood. We meet at different churches on different blocks just to make sure that God knows that the cries of the people from Englewood are being emitted to him and hopefully landing right at his ears as he stoops down and leans in to hear the cries of his people.
How have you seen God work through that?
It has been incredible. There have been so many amazing things that have happened. First of all, I don't know if y'all think it's a miracle or not, but the fact that I just talked about churches being unified in prayer and praying together, that's a miracle in and of itself. And so we've seen what happens when the people of God put their own agendas to the side and pray for what God wants, which is to see his glory revealed in a place. So we've seen church unity. We've seen pastors' relationships grow. We've seen pastors who've fallen in love with the neighborhood and now don't narrate it by its brokenness, but also narrate it by its beauty, so that when they pray, they can pray what God has done, not just what we want God to do. We've also seen some great strides, like we have outreaches all the time. There's a major one that was happening on 57th and Racine with Pastor Grant and Experience Church. And we have seen so many people give their life to the Lord as we just come out, play music, have food, hang out, pray together, and people, you just do it consistently. The more consistent you are, you become more consistent than the drug dealers. You become more consistent than the gangbangers, right? And people start to know the pastors instead of the gangbangers. They start to know the pastors instead of the drug dealers. And now when you walk by on any given day, it's, hey, pastor, how you doing, right?
Yeah.
And now people are gaining a new respect for the church, a new respect for God, and a love for one another. And that has been so remarkable.
And I'm sure that brings more people than just the church together.
That's right.
And for the improvement and the transformation of this community.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, my heart is all about seeing communal flourishing. So we partner with all types of folks, not just the people of God, not just Christians, but we for any community organization, the Resident Association of Greater Englewood, Imagine Englewood If, the Grow Greater Englewood. There's all these organizations and great people that, even the Inner City Muslim Action Network, right, with Rami Nasashibi, because what we recognize is bullets don't have a religion, nor do they have a race. And when we care about people, then we all need to work together to see communal flourishing. And I just believe that that's the heart of God. The heart of God is to see the world be what God created it to be. But he's only doing that through us. The Bible clearly tells us, right, like that he can do all things, right, like according to the power that's working in us, though. Not that God is going to do it for us. The exceeding and abundantly that we're going to see is going to come through the work that we do.
That's good. All right, so Pastor Jay, we've walked around the block.
No, we're back
literally.
at the church.
We're back
That's
at the church. So before we leave,
Yes.
thank you for your time. Give us one tip, one thing that you would say if people in other communities are watching this or encouraged, inspired, saying, man, I want to do something like this in my neighborhood.
Yes.
What's one tip you would give for people to see people coming together, praying together? What's one key that you would say?
The first thing I would say to everyone is learn your place. Now, I know that sounds crazy when we're talking about prayer, but God also doesn't want to hear inaccurate prayers. And if you really want to get people together, gather them around something that everyone has a passion for, and everyone has a passion for where they live. People want to see their own neighborhood, the place where their children play, the place where they go shopping, the place where they walk and ride their bikes, to be a place where they don't have to fear or worry. Everyone has that desire. Wrap it around place. Know that God is concerned about your place. God has created your place, and God already inhabits your place. Let that be the core of your prayers. Let that be the core of gathering people together. And I can promise you that you'll see true results, because I believe that God is a God of place.
That's so good. Pastor Brooks, thank you for joining us today, walking around the block with me. We're going to put some information on the Chicagoland United in Prayer website about how to find out about each neighborhood in the city of Chicago, about upcoming prayer events, including the ones going on here in Englewood, but all around the Chicagoland area.
Right.
And you can join any of them. If you've got something going on, you can let Chicagoland United in Prayer know, and they will post that up. Anything that's bringing people together to pray together. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks, Pastor Brooks.
Thanks
Good to
so
see you.
much
Do a
for
little
having me.
elbow bump
Boom,
there
little elbow bump.
of the day. Take care.
Stay safe.